MrBeast recently turned down a $1 billion offer for his empire, and I'm going to talk about the tax problem that no one's talking about that MrBeast will face in coming years. MrBeast is one of the biggest content creators on YouTube. He's turned that into businesses, from burger stands to online businesses to translating his channel into multiple languages. He is a force to be reckoned with. And he claims that he recently turned down a $1 billion offer, which people like Gary Vaynerchuk came and said the offer should actually be $10 billion or even much more, because they're saying MrBeast can create mobile game companies, movie production companies, social media apps, movie studios. The sky is the limit, basically. MrBeast's business will be worth tens of billions of dollars. One source even said it will be a centib billionaire business. He will be a centib billionaire at some point, which is crazy to think about. I'm going to tell you the one thing that no one's talking about. And if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs legally go where you're treated best to reduce your taxes, protect your assets, and increase your freedom. And so what nobody's talking about is MrBeast is going to have a big tax bill coming up in the years to come. And so none of this is tax advice. But now that he has this fair offer on the table, I don't know exactly what the offer is, and so certainly you could evaluate that for tax purposes. But someone put it, presumably in writing, we want to give you $1 billion. So I'm going to break it down capital gains, I'm going to break it down income tax issues. On the capital gains side, this is one that a lot of business owners don't talk about. And we've had clients over the years that will come to us, they'll buy our services when they have, let's say, a $10 million business. They started it from zero. Then they'll come back when it's 30, then they'll come back when it's 50, and finally they'll have the offer in writing on the table. They want to take it. And it's like, well, guys, the time to do this was when we started at 10 million, because basically what you're trying to do when you're selling a business is arbitrage the difference on the tax side between where your business is worth now and where it will be worth in the future. Okay, when you, in the case of a United States citizen, for example, move to Puerto Rico or expatriate, give up your citizenship, they're going to figure out, okay, how long have you been running the business in the case of Puerto Rico? What's the business worth in the case of expatriation? Same thing if you live in pretty much any other country that applies an exit tax when you leave, so Canada or Australia or any of those Western countries. When you leave, you can't just take $1 billion business and say, hey guys, sayonara. They're going to say, great, well, you should pay us on some valuation of what that is, and then everything else after that you get to keep. And so if you're going to take just, let's say, the Gary V numbers, $1 billion business to a $10 billion business, MrBeast, if he was willing to move to Puerto Rico, if he was willing to give up U.S. citizenship and run the channel from somewhere else, he could save potentially, again, Puerto Rico would be time-based, so how long has the business been run versus how long will he run the business. So the sooner he would move to Puerto Rico, the better. If he wanted to expatriate, they would say, okay, it's worth $1 billion. That's a pretty fair comp. If someone put that in writing, if someone made an actual offer, you could maybe debate that. You could say, hey, it's worth less, but that's maybe a decent comp. And so if he were to bounce now, that next $9 billion, or according to some, the next $99 billion would be free. He would save himself, 23, 24%. He would potentially save himself even more, because taxes on things like capital gains are probably going to go up in the United States in the years to come. And so, hey, you could argue, if you have $100 billion, does the $23 billion really matter? Well, maybe, maybe not. But certainly if you're good at, reinvesting in things and building things, I would argue it could have an incredible compounding effect. That guy's really, really young. And so the challenge is, now that we have this big offer from MrBeast, it's going to be very hard for him to, let's say, expatriate. Now, no one ever said MrBeast wanted to expatriate, but let's say he wanted to, again, just say, hey, I'm going to lock in the delta between 1 and infinity of what my business will be worth. Where's the money come to pay that tax bill on, let's call it $1 billion? Or let's say you could figure something out, you could reduce it. It's still going to be a big number, right? So where do you get that liquidity? Probably doesn't have the liquidity like most business owners who, again, started at zero, I would assume. And so there's really not much basis. There's not much to reduce it. He's hardly a small business that would qualify for small business incentives at that point. So he's going to find that liquidity either by selling part of the company, which then locks in the value, or I don't know how else he would get the liquidity. And so he's kind of, if he ever wanted to save taxes, like any business owner, you don't want to get that high valuation. You want to be offshore if you want to save the capital gains tax on that big number before you actually get that big number. And so that is the challenge. Now, on the income tax side, you say, okay, In his case, I mean, you're talking about $1 billion valuation, and that's like no go, right? $10 billion, people are still saying no go. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars in capital gains taxes on that. So that's going to be the big win for him. I think a lot of people overlook that in favor of income tax savings. Maybe their business makes, $10 million, $20 million a year in this case, but they have some huge valuation on it. The tax savings on the income side are a pittance compared to what you're going to get on the capital gains tax side. So he should have focused on that. And I would say anyone who is building a business that's going to have huge valuations should focus on that. On the income tax side, I don't know all of his businesses. Let's take MrBeast Burger, for example. It's a ghost kitchen formula. Basically, they're saying, hey, you've got a restaurant, you cook our stuff, we've got an app, we'll bring you customers. Theoretically, and again, not tax advice, haven't evaluated it in full. We have a whole network of international tax experts we work with who could look at this. But my initial thoughts are, maybe that's something that you could largely offshore, because is the work that he's doing really being done in the United States? Basically, he's got a series of independent agents who have their own businesses and then also cook MrBeast burgers, and then different third parties come and pick this up and deliver them. Theoretically, a good part of that could be moved offshore if MrBeast and his crew wanted to actually move offshore to, let's say, Dubai, or let's say the Cayman Islands. Maybe he could buy his own island. He's already buying islands and giving away islands. Maybe he could find an island to move to somewhere in another country. And so something like MrBeast Burger, even though the actual burgers are being made and delivered to the United States, I think there could be some tax planning there to potentially, again, not knowing the details, figure out how to offshore a good chunk of that, because the value is being driven in the cloud. The value is being driven by a YouTube channel that sends people to buy burgers in the same way that we've got a YouTube channel that drives people to buy stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean that all the value is being created in the United States. When it comes to things like software businesses and apps and all the other stuff that he's doing or says he could do in the future, that could largely be offshored. And so one thing that might be valuable for someone like MrBeast is finding a 50% non-US partner. So MrBeast and his crew could move to another country and bring in a 50% ownership. Potentially that could be part of some expatriation. And again, let me be clear. MrBeast has not called me and said, hey, I want to renounce, and so I don't want to make it think that this is just, I'm saying he could do this. But if he were to get someone to have 50% of the business by putting in more capital, that could theoretically pay any kind of taxation to get out, and then he could keep all the upside. But what it would also do is it's going to be easier if you're an American and you own 50% of a business with 50% non-American. That is going to mean you're going to have an easier set of offshore tax rules to both reduce your tax dramatically as well as defer tax. If you wanted to pay some tax, you'd be able to bring that money back into the United States. Otherwise, you can continue to reinvest it into all kinds of businesses offshore. And so on the income tax side, I think certainly a YouTube channel could be moved offshore. The challenge is for all the US viewers. The US does now require tax to be paid on advertising revenue from US viewers. So a channel like ours, we don't run ads. That doesn't affect us. A channel like MrBeast, that's going to obviously affect him in a big way. So if that's a big chunk of his revenue, then being outside of the United States on the income tax side wouldn't be that big of a deal. You'd be looking at the businesses which float above the YouTube channel. And so if you have a YouTube channel that puts a lot more money than it does in ads into other business ventures, then that would be a reason to move that offshore. And if those are run in the cloud and they were run, kind of at a distance from the stuff in the United States, he could basically, with a 50-50 partner, potentially get tax rate down to zero. Without a 50-50 partner, he'd be somewhere probably in the low double digits. And so the idea would be that you can run a YouTube channel from anywhere in the world. You can drop 1 million pennies into someone's backyard anywhere in the world. You can do a lot of stuff. I mean, maybe that would make the channel more international. But MrBeast has now a situation where he's done incredibly successful, and hats off to him. But now it's going to be very hard if he wanted to go offshore to do that. So he maybe doesn't want to go offshore. He may not want to go to Puerto Rico, but the point is, you want to learn from this, that if you're planning on making a move, don't wait until you get that big valuation, whether it's $1 billion or $100 million or even $10 million, because if you don't have the liquidity to pay that exit tax bill, you're going to be stuck there in perpetuity, and it's just going to kind of continue to go around and around. On the income tax side, find ways to provide services that aren't connected to one place on the ground, and you'll be able to reduce your income tax. But you need to act early if you want to save capital gains tax on a future exit and if you want to reduce income tax on your business.